On to another day. We are coming to you live from the Leader Factor studio. Tim and I decided to get together today and do this.
We're actually
in person.
face in person. What a weird thing.
It is a weird thing. You're probably used to seeing us on two separate inputs and two separate screens. But we thought we'd give it a different try today. So let us know what you like about this. If you like this better. If you like this better, go ahead and give the stream a thumbs up. Leave us a comment saying get together more often.
How do you like the backdrop, by the way?
Pretty let us know.
It's not even fake.
It's not even fake.
Real. It's real brick, by the way.
It is. So. We do get that comment sometimes of that question. It's like, is that background virtual? Same thing with my office too. People are always asking, like, what virtual background is that? And then I always roll my chair back.
That's right.
And tell them that's not virtual. This is our space. So welcome. Thank you for spending some time with us today. We've been doing these just about every week for, I don't know, we've done 6 or 7 of these in a row, and they've gone fairly well. So if you'd like us to keep doing these, let us know. Tim even had the comment like 2 minutes before we joined. He's like, we should just do a podcast. If that's something that you would be interested in, the Leader Factor podcast, let us know. Because the way that we prep for these and the way that we...
I probably shouldn't have said that.
I know. We probably shouldn't have. We probably shouldn't have put that out into the universe. But if it is something that you'd be interested in, something that you would watch, let us know. Because now we've got the webinars. We've got the LinkedIn Lives and the Facebook and the YouTube and the every platform you can think of. And so who knows? Maybe that would be an interesting content addition. So, Tim, you've had a big week this week.
Big week.
As I'm looking on the event schedule, you've had 6
big events this week. But, you know, the amazing thing about the pandemic is that it's challenged our assumptions. And we've been doing things virtually that we wouldn't even have tried a couple of years ago. And we're able to reach a global audience. And so we've been speaking with people from just this week, Egypt and Qatar, and South America and Hungary and all parts of the globe, which is really amazing. So we're grateful for what the pandemic has forced us to do. And necessity is the mother of invention. So and constraints create innovation often, right? It's the constraints that are pushing against you, that force you to think differently and then come up with new solutions.
And I think I could even add to that list of countries. I've had at least 3 or 4 this week. And so it's been fun. And certainly something that you couldn't have done 10 years ago. Right? If you think of just a couple years ago, we really couldn't have done this many events in a week. Unless we chartered a fighter jet.
That's right. And we went from place to place. Okay. So what are we going to talk about today?
Today, we're going to talk about, a couple announcements that I want to make on the front end. The first is the 19th of November. This is an exciting date for us because it's our next webinar. This is number, I think, 730, it seems like. Employee engagement and psychological safety, which comes first. This is an interesting topic and a topic that I talk to a lot of you about pretty frequently. And that conversation is what does engagement have to do with psychological safety? Is there a relationship? If you're surveying, should you do both? Should you just do one? Are they synonymous?
And in the cause and effect chain, what comes first?
Which comes first?
Because what we're gonna make the case that psychological safety precedes employee engagement. Employee engagement is an outcome. It's a result. It's a consequence of what's happening in the environment, in the climate. And then that engagement results from that. So stay tuned for that. I think you're going to enjoy that discussion.
So we'll break it down. And today we're going to be talking a little bit about why some leaders are afraid of psychological safety. It's something that we've had conversations about, and we think that you might be interested in. So I would like to share this about Winston Churchill.
Please
that's
do.
Appropriate?
Go ahead. The quote is incredible. And I think it kind of sets the tone and the stage for our conversation today.
Okay.
Yeah.
Winston Churchill once had a growing empathy deficit that his wife Clementine recognized. Not only that, but she pointed out the link between empathy and innovation. At one point, she observed, "My darling Winston, I must confess that I have noticed a deterioration in your manner, and you are not as kind as you used to be. So contemptuous toward subordinates in meetings that no ideas, good or bad, will be forthcoming, and you won't get the best results." Perhaps it was the influence of power that slowly killed his sympathies. Apparently, he was coachable and got better. If you have an empathy deficit, take a day and focus on people, not numbers. Watch what happens. That one hits me.
It really does. So we need to think about, so at that point, Winston Churchill, he had become crusty and snarky, and he wasn't treating people very well. And he was not cultivating psychological safety on his own team. And so we need to think about this question. Some leaders are afraid of psychological safety. Why? And when? And who's afraid of it? Why would they be afraid of it? Because not everybody's excited about it. From the beginning of the pandemic, we've had exploding interest in this concept because it's so important. What is it? An environment of rewarded vulnerability, but not everybody's excited about it. So if you're not excited about it, then that means you're probably threatened by it.
Or you don't understand it.
Or you don't understand it.
And maybe both. Probably both.
Yeah. But let's think a little bit about who's not going to like this, who's going to feel threatened by it, who's going to be afraid of psychological safety, right?
Let us know too.
Yeah. So let's start with those who are benefited by the status quo. The status quo, they're in a cozy nest. And the status quo, they love the status quo. They want a calcified, fossilized status quo. They like things the way they are. So psychological safety is a perceived threat for them. Because as we know, psychological safety, it is a leveling agent. It is an equalizer. It does compress from a cultural standpoint. It compresses the hierarchy. And it redistributes influence a little bit. So you can see that people they'd be a little skittish about that.
You absolutely can. Yes. And it makes me think about the different dynamics across industries and sectors. And that some have a higher propensity to stay flat than others. And by flat, I mean unchanging. By flat, I mean that type of dynamic where we don't want to ruffle feathers. We want to keep things as they are, because in many cases, maybe I benefit from that. So what, in your experience, Tim, have been some of those industries and sectors that have been a little quieter than others that way? Which ones prefer to stay relatively static? Do you see any?
Well, I would say this is kind of interesting. Heavy manufacturing. So any organization that has a long-term investment horizon and the capital expenditure, the capital budget, you have to have a planning horizon that is at least 5 to 10 years, because you're making big bets.
Huge bets.
And because of that, it's this lumbering long cycle. They can get really entrenched. So I would say heavy industry, anything that relies on a very long capital budgeting cycle. Interesting.
Like countries.
Like countries. So governments too. Educational institutions too. They become very entrenched. People get very comfortable.
They're operating on very long time horizons. In many cases, they've been around for a long time. And the dynamic by nature is less dynamic compared to something like high tech.
So what it tends to do is it tends to breed this tradition, this imperial model of leadership, where you're the oracle. You know all the answers. And you pride yourself on being the one that everybody has to come to, and then you can give them the answers and you can dispatch them. Think about how antique that is.
Very, and yet very present.
Right. And so what it does is it socializes leaders to love their perch, to hide behind title, position, and authority. So here's a question for you. This is a question everybody can ask.
Yeah.
This is a diagnostic question. In your organization or on your team, do the best ideas win? Now, you got to think hard about this. Do the best ideas win? I want you to think about this.
Yeah.
When people bring up ideas, when people challenge the status quo, or do the biggest egos win?
Yeah.
Or does power win? Does the social hierarchy win?
Well, I think that the first fork in the road is that first question, is do the best ideas win?
Yeah.
Because if so, what must be true? We're running on a meritocracy of ideas.
That's right.
The best idea wins.
Yeah.
And so if the best idea does consistently win, and those ideas are coming from different places, then it would seem we have a pretty healthy dynamic.
I think so.
Right?
Yeah.
So if that's not true, if the best ideas aren't winning, then we know, first of all, we have a problem, and that it's likely consequence of what we're talking about today.
Yeah.
Right?
So if you see exaggerated deference to the chain of command, to the hierarchy, to social hierarchy, to position,
unilateral decisions.
Yeah, you probably have a problem. On the other hand, if you see people that are agnostic to title and position and authority, and we really can debate issues on their merits, and the best ideas really do win, and divergent thinking is being verbalized and vocalized, and we're really going at it.
Yeah.
Those are the signs of a pretty healthy culture where people are not afraid of psychological safety.
Yep. Another angle that I was looking at as I was thinking about this topic this week was competence. And I think that this is it's an interesting angle, because I think that some leaders, the cycle time goes way down in terms of their skill development, and they start moving slower and slower and slower.
They're slowing
And
down.
the environment starts to outpace them.
Yes.
But you can hide that if you impose as a leader.
That's right.
And if you exude just unilateral decision making, and you shut people down and you institute fear, you have more control over the situation, and you're less likely to come up short in a competence battle if we're talking about good ideas and staying up with what's going on. So I think that that's part of it, is you might age out, and if you don't stay relevant,
it's really true. You're going into
have a hard time.
You're going into an obsolescence cycle.
Yeah.
You can feel that you're falling behind.
Yeah.
So what do? You're grasping, you're pushing the fear button so that you can maintain control.
Yeah.
Instead of staying relevant, learning at or above the speed of change, what we call learning agility. You're not doing that. You're falling behind. And so now you're getting very insecure.
Yeah.
And if you're insecure, there's a tendency to use fear as a control mechanism.
Yeah.
And then you can see why you don't like psychological safety. I don't think I like psychological safety, right? Because it democratizes the influence to a certain extent. So that's not, you're not liking that. You're going to push that away.
Yep. So to recap, what we're saying is that not all leaders are going to fall in love with this idea of psychological safety.
Right.
And one of the things that I keep running into in conversations that I have with you and with the community, with our clients, with our prospects, is people sometimes expect that leaders or people generally will embrace this idea. Maybe they stumble into the idea and they're like, this is revolutionary. We need to incorporate this in our organization. We need to adopt this mindset.
And everybody's going to love it.
And everyone's going to love it. Right?
Yeah.
But they're met with some resistance.
Right.
And they start going up the ladder.
Yeah.
Or even laterally or down.
Yeah.
And there's some friction.
Yeah.
And they're surprised. Like, isn't this what we want? And yes, it is what we want.
And even the traditional managers and leaders, the command and control types, the fear and intimidation types, the large in charge types, they will tell you that they're all about it.
Right.
They will tell you that, oh, absolutely, we need psychological safety.
Yep.
I'm in favor of that. I support that.
Yep.
They will speak the words. Those words will roll out of their mouths, but then they fall up short, or they come up short with their behavior.
Yep. I think that that's true. So the first diagnostic that you can ask or use is, do the best ideas win? And that's a really great thermometer to use to see if the culture is healthy and if this mindset is something that's likely to be adopted and encouraged and moved throughout the organization. And if not, well, that's where we need to start.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the things I want to mention is that often in these conversations, there's some finger pointing and, I have been met with this friction and it's not going to work. We have to be sure to put our own house in order, if you will, before we point fingers. And so it's important when we talk about these types of topics in these leader factor lives to be introspective.
Yeah.
For you as a leader, for me as a leader, to ask ourselves, are we scared or threatened at all by this idea of psychological safety?
Yeah.
If there's an instance where we feel ourselves pulling back from that idea, why is that? Is it true that we may want to continue to have some control over a certain situation? And this can go more broadly than the workplace. This can be anywhere.
Yeah. So you need to ask yourself, when do you get defensive?
Yeah, that's a great
When
question.
do you take things personally?
Yep.
When are you temperamental? When are you territorial?
Love that.
You do need to ask those questions, because what are the events or the things that are triggering you that way? When are you getting defensive?
Yeah.
That if you can identify those times, it's really valuable.
Super valuable.
Then you understand where you are insecure, and then what are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
Other than controlling people.
Yeah.
Because that's, in the end, that's not the right way to go.
Yep. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree more. Love those self-diagnostics. So one of the things that we would love to hear from you is, what is your takeaway from today's Leader Factor Live? Is there anything that we've talked about today that struck a chord? Were there any light bulb moments? What's something useful that you're going to take back into your professional life, into your organization? We always love to see those types of comments to make sure that we're on point with the content and to make sure that what we're talking about is relevant for you. So go ahead and do that on whatever platform it is that you're on. Okay. So what we would like to do is recognize a member of the community. And today we're going to be recognizing Christy Weber. It's about time that we give a special thank you to Christy. Christy has been so engaged in our community really from the very beginning. And we're so grateful for her and her contribution.
Great colleague.
Yeah, especially when it comes to psychological safety, what she does for those around her and her organization. I want to give, she gave us a wonderful endorsement, and I want to share that with you. Christy said, I've done a ton of research on psychological safety, read periodicals, books, articles, research, info on Google's Project Aristotle, podcasts, etc. And it wasn't until I read about the 4 stages of psychological safety that I truly understood the concept at a gut level. It truly was an aha moment when I read the 4 stages of psychological safety. From an evolutionary perspective, the 4 stages speak to what human beings need in social situations to thrive. Work is a social setting, and therefore we need to first feel like we belong and are included. We then can feel safe to learn and contribute, and ultimately in a safe organization, we can feel safe enough to be candid and challenge the status quo. Thank you, Leader Factor. You change lives by shining light on what's needed for a work culture to function and thrive. Christy, thank you. We believe wholeheartedly in the concept of psychological safety. And if you haven't read the book yet and you're joining us for the first time, Tim is the author of the book, The 4 Stages of Psychological Safety. That is really what our organization is about, is culture and leadership. And we think that this is the foundation, it's the core, it's the essence. And we're very grateful to be able to share it with you. Okay, so just to recap on the announcements, middle of November, we're going to be having the webinar about psychological safety and employee engagement. So if you haven't registered for that yet, please do. If you're part of our newsletter, you'll get that every week and you'll have an opportunity to register there. You can go to leaderfactor.com and register for the webinar there as well. Follow us on LinkedIn. If you stay in touch with us, it's going to be hard not to hear about that. So just keep your eyes and ears open and you'll have an opportunity to register for that webinar. Okay, I think that's about it.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to say?
Just come back to the parting thought, which is actually a question. Do the best ideas win in your organization? That's a great diagnostic question. So take that and think about it, and then observe and see what's happening. See if anyone's afraid of psychological safety, then figure out why, and then take some steps to overcome those obstacles.
Excellent. So with that, we will end today. Happy Friday. Have a wonderful weekend. Tune in next week for another one of these. If you liked today's session, give us a like, drop us a comment, follow us on whatever platform it is that you're on and those that you're not, and have a wonderful day. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.